Good morning and welcome to day 4, number 125 with the man Frank SCALISH, and probably the most appearances as a special guest on day 4. I think Todd Bucknell from Hydromotive Engineering would hold that title. Todd, can you think of anyone else on day 4 that's been on more than you have?
Well, no, after you said that, I'm going to take it. So let's run with that.
It is. How are you doing this morning, Frank?
I'm doing great, man.
I'm good, dude. I'm ready, man. I'm ready to get into some activity.
All right, we got a jam-packed show. So Frank calls me up last month, and when Frank gets excited, dude, wait till you hear this. This is beautiful. Been working with Todd. Freaking props in, man. This thing, unbelievable. So we got to get Todd on to talk about it. Obviously, all of my prop knowledge comes from day 4 with Todd. So there it is right there. I'm going to turn it over to you guys. We're going to do the first half of the show is going to be about big water propping. And then we're going to let Todd get back to work. And then Frank, you're going to do a recap in the second half of the show that is very timely.
Yeah, the recap's important because if you guys if you have the ability to take notes, you're going to want to take notes. I'm going to break down Great Lakes smallmouth movement from pre-spawn through the fall. I'm going to give depth ranges, things to look for, and it's just going to be it's a compact version of everything that we talked about individually over the course of time. So for whatever you want to make of it, this is going to be the Cliff Note version of real detailed stuff, but there's going to be some very important bullet points in here to help you guys find these fish faster and easier.
All right, but first we're going to talk about the shiny things because everyone likes shiny things. And this prop is modern marvel. So I have no idea which direction to start in for this, but I guess
we can do it.
It's up to you. I would start from the beginning, explain what it is and why there's a need for this thing. Because, I mean, it doesn't look like anything that we use in Oklahoma, to be quite honest.
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be on some of the smaller bodies of water you guys are fishing. But so here's I'll tell you what I wanted, and then Todd will tell you how he made it. Okay. So what I needed a prop for Great Lakes fishing for giant water. And when I say giant water, I'm not talking about 1 to 2 footers where most 21-foot bass boats could walk right over. I'm talking about waves where you got to negotiate. You have to fight your way back or fight your way out. And so I needed a prop that had very limited slip. So I always had forward movement, and I needed a prop that by my throttle positioning and how I'm steering, I can put the nose of my boat anywhere I want it at any given time. And I can always create an angle on the boat. So if a big wave was coming in, I can get my nose up, look for the small side of that big wave, turn the nose over to it, tack over it, and go on to the next one. What happens with normal props, like your 3 blades and your 4 blades, when you set your bass boat up, everybody sets their bass boat up. They want to go fast. Mm-hmm. And Hydromotive Engineering is actually on the cutting edge of high performance.
We did a show on that. We did a show where Todd talked about setting it up, how high you want your rooster tail, how much boat you want, all that. It's worth going back. It's in the list. It's under the directory of day 4s. Worth going back and watching that show.
So what this is, I don't want to say it's the complete opposite, because there's still traits that need to be there, but it's a completely different way of performance of your bass
boat. Just like 4-wheel drive, like you want a Jeep, you're going rock crawling, doesn't really matter how fast you could go. You want to be able to get over those rocks with the Jeep. When you see that, this is what we're talking about. Different type of performance.
That's right. This is big water performance. So what everybody has to realize is that, and anybody that fishes the Great Lakes, Thousand Islands, at times Oneida and Champlain, Toledo Bend, all those lakes that get big. A lot of guys, I don't want to say they don't they're not driving their boats properly. But what happens is they'll come back at the end of the day, their trolling motor brackets will be broken. Maybe a graph or two is busted off the front of the boat. Because in order for them to get over big water, they got to wind those big props up. And so they got to get their RPM screaming on those things so they grab and bite water. And Matt, you've been in big water, and you know, if you're climbing a wall of water and your prop starts to blow out, which means slip, you're no longer forward progress. You're neutral or negative progress. Makes it way more difficult to navigate that big water, and it's actually dangerous. So what happens is, in order for you to keep locked up, you got to keep your RPMs higher, which means you're trying to go faster, which becomes you're breaking everything in your boat apart, because
you're eating a wave. You're powering down into it, and now you're breaking everything.
Right, or your nose drops and boom. So Todd and I sat down and I said, here's what I want, here's what we have to try to do. Give me some freaking ideas, dude, because Todd's always got a sneaky suspicion. So I'm like, give me some ideas. And so at that point, you're up, my man.
All right. So appreciate you having me on again, Matt. When Frank and I talked about this, we knew that we had to come up with something a little bit different, lower pitch, and also a little bit smaller diameter and smaller blade area. And the whole idea is to get the prop to spool up quick. So when we touch that pedal, we want instant throttle response, instant forward movement. So if you've got to climb the wave, you've got to put the nose of the boat wherever you need to put it, it happens instantaneously. Now, with your, normal guys running 24, 25, 26 pitch, that's great for smooth water, great for inland lakes and rivers. But for big water, it's going to take too long. As Frank mentioned, by the time you get to the RPMs where you're into the power curve of the motor, you're going way too fast to handle that type of water. So what we came up with was a smaller diameter prop mounted on a smaller tube, which the blades progress out of the prop from, allowing this prop to spool up quick. So instead of a 14.5 inch or a 15 inch, we built a bunch of different prototypes. We ended up at 13 3/4 inch diameter. The prop is going to run lower. For those of you that have a hydraulic jack plate, real easy, you're going to run it about an inch, maybe 1.5 inches lower than what you normally would. And it spools up unbelievably well, stays hooked up, and it's instant RPM for the days that you need to keep that nose of the boat up and not take walls of water everywhere. So blade design, blade diameter, and the tube design were critical to achieve those things that we wanted to do.
Right. And the cool thing about it is that when you go on plane, you have very little bow lift. It just kind of scoots the boat up there. So your bow's not going whoa and trying to get over and go. It's just, the boat just gets up and goes. And so what happens is, let's say I want to get the nose up. We did a test a few days ago where between 14 and 20 miles an hour, I can keep the boat at a 60-degree angle, super low RPM, so I'm not cracking the motor out, super low RPMs, and it just goes forward like a snowplow.
So what prevents it from tipping over and getting on plane then? What is it in the prop that allows you to do that without it?
Strictly throttle response. The more throttle you give to it, it'll want to shove the nose over. But if you want to stay in that in-between zone, Matt, between plowing and getting up on plane, now it'll hold there. Instead of the boat wanting to sit back down or jump up on plane, you've got the ability to keep it right there.
But what is it? Because there's more surface area because of the blades and the cup and how it's done, or what allows you to do that in the prop, I guess, is my question.
The 5 blades, blades for sure.
Can we show this thing? You got it right there?
We sure can.
Oh, they both have it.
Yours?
Look at this. We got double props.
You do yours. I'll wait for that.
Up just a bit higher. All right, now can you turn it so we can see it from the front view? Okay. Oh my gosh. So how rare is a 5-blade? Obviously, it's like, hey, if you're going to the Great Lakes, you need to throw on a 4-blade. Are 5 blades rare?
No. Well, I'll let Todd answer that one.
For bass boats, probably on the rarer side, Matt, to be honest with you. Now the offshore boats, some of the newer style, 80, 90, 100 mile an hour bass boats are running them. But we get all of our information from dealing with the big offshore boats. Okay. So your, cigarettes, your fountains, your scarabs, Most of those guys are running 5 blades because of the water that they run in day and day out. So we took a lot of those attributes and tried to pin that down into something an outboard can turn, but get the same rough water results. And I think we hit the nail on the head.
Oh yeah, we did. And the cool thing about this 5 blade is there's no BS with it. You just slap it on and go. There's no vent holes to plug. It's really it's just really designed so perfectly for what it does that there's not, the only monkeying around you do is if you want to lower your jack plate or raise your jack plate, depending on how rough the water is. That's really the only thing you do. So guys with hydraulic plates, it's a piece of cake because you just tap it down till you get smooth. Guys with static plates, if you're nervous about it, just run it where your plate is one day and use your trim and tilt to adjust your performance levels. And then once, if you're not happy with that, drop the plate down a little bit. Static plates aren't hard to, they're just not hard to lower and raise. They're not designed that way. But with the guys with the static plates, you just got to take a minute prior to you going somewhere to do that.
This is not I'm getting, just based on what you guys are saying, not an everyday prop. Like, you're not going to be like what you want to run 24/7 on this. Can it hurt anything if you do? Like, what are you sacrificing if you're like, hey, I just want to go with the 5 blade. I fish the Great Lakes, I fish big water, but I don't. But I mean, it's kind of a specialty deal, but there's nothing wrong with running it all the time, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
And, on Frank's boat, on his Alpha 211 with the 250 XS, the boat actually went 60 miles an hour with 2 of us in there.
So you are sacrificing speed.
Oh, yeah, you are sacrificing speed. But the difference is, man, on a day where you're never going to get over 35 or 40 miles an hour, it's just inconsequential. But if the lake lays down later in the day and you still want to motor back to the weigh-in or wherever you have to go, you're still going to be able to do so with no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, and at that speed, you're not running thousands of miles. So you're losing a minute to 5 minutes at best.
Yeah.
But you don't understand the time you gain navigating the rough water
because you're not down. You're just continually going in it because you have control. Yes. Okay. Stupid question, Todd. And I understand this is a physics question. I think it's a physics question.
I was told there would be no math.
Why is a 4 and a 5 blades? Like, I run a 23 pitch 3 blade.
Mm-hmm.
Why is a 20 or a 5 blade and a 4 blade? What actually makes the boat go slower than a 3 blade?
Well, I'll try to answer this right.
Is that a dumb question?
No, not at all. Not at all. It has nothing to do with the propeller, as it has more to do with the boat motor setup and how the boat likes to run as far as motor height. What height on the jack plate? If your boat liked to run an inch above the bottom of the boat, you'd never run a 3 blade. You wouldn't hook up. The prop would just slip too much and it just wouldn't perform. But by using that theory, everybody would be running 2 blades.
Yeah.
Nobody runs a 2 blade anymore. So we've gotten to the point where X dimension, where the motor's mounted on the transom of the boat, power and the load that you're carrying has nothing to do with what the fastest prop is. It has to do with what the most efficient prop is that pushes your boat for the load that you're carrying.
Okay.
Some boats like to run deeper with a 3 blade to provide more bow lift. Some boats like to run a little bit more level with a 4 blade. So it really has to do with boat motor combination more than prop.
And your weight distribution in the boat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Question here. Does this affect gas mileage on your boat then if you have 5 blades on it? Like, are you getting less gas mileage with it?
Because it's lower pitch, it's not going to be a prop that you're going to go for gallons per hour. It's going to be smiles per hour.
Okay.
Because you're going to be able to navigate that you would never be able to do with a 24 or 25 pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way. Plus you're not going to run the 5 blade in your rev limiter all day either.
No.
Yeah,
no.
which would mean wide open.
Right.
You're going to be between 2,500 and probably 4,000, 4,500 RPM all day.
Okay. Yeah, which saves fuel.
Hold yours up, Frank. I want to see it again. Let's get a couple.
Okay, so mine, all right, has this ring on it right here.
Yep.
That's called a blowout ring.
Block off.
A block off ring. And so what my boat didn't want was any bubbles coming over this thing.
Because that's air, and air, you can't catch air with it, and you want the friction and water resistance, so you're always biting and gripping the water.
Yeah, well,
and
here's
not
the deal,
air
man.
bubbles.
That tube is very similar to what the Mercury Trophy is. We call it an over-through hub tube. So when you slide that prop on without the block offering on there, the tube of the propeller is a half-inch smaller than the diameter of the gear case. It doesn't snug up all the way in. So the exhaust coming out of the lower unit would come over the blades without that block offering on there. We don't want any exhaust, any aerated water coming over there. We want that prop biting in solid water the entire time.
Yeah, the other thing about this prop is, what do you call these in the inside?
Those are spiral spokes.
They're spiral, so you're
turn it around the other way, Frank. It might look a little. You might be
so
able to
the
see
exhaust.
I'm gonna watch Frank lose a finger or drop it right in his lap.
Okay, so if you can see the spokes on the inside there, Matt, they're angled like a turbine fan. So
Okay.
as that prop is rotating, it is actually scavenging the exhaust out of the lower unit, helping the motor at the same time get that exhaust out of there, which spools the motor up faster, gets you into your RPMs quicker, but without slip. That's the key. Without slip.
Right. This thing is like a giant sprocket on a dirt bike. It's just pure power. 100% pure power.
All right. Dumb question number 2, Todd. Is it shiny because shiny stuff sells, or is there? I mean, I'm serious though. Does it cut? Is that just the material? I always see props, and they're all like, "What is there? Is that a coating that helps it perform, or is that just how it is?"
It's just how it is. It
Okay.
has nothing to do with performance. Whether you have a satin finish, we've experimented with a dimpled finish like a golf ball. We've experimented with everything. Okay.
Okay.
There is zero difference whatsoever. But whereas most props, stainless, are polished because they look good coming out of the box, everybody likes to see that nice new shiny object when they open it up.
All right. Dumb question number 3, and then I'm done with hopefully the dumb questions. But how do you determine how thin it's going to be on the end and how sharp it's going to be? Because you would think, I mean, would you not want that thing to be as sharp as possible to be able to cut through the water faster? Or what's the deal with like sharpening the prop, I guess?
Well, sharpening the prop, we try to get a nice rounded leading edge, Matt, as Frank is showing right there.
Rounded, not like a knife.
Not like a knife edge. 2 things. The knife edge for high performance and racing might be a little bit more advantageous.
Okay.
But for guys that might be bumping sticks, twigs, get into a sandy bottom, a muddy bottom, that would just, tin can that leading edge real easily. So having that rounded leading edge, you're not going to notice any difference in performance, but the longevity of the prop before you've got to get the leading edges repaired will last a lot longer. Now, thickness of the blade, that is based, on experience, power output. Obviously, that blade's going to be a little bit thinner than a prop that we make for a 47-foot fountain with, triple 1,000 horsepower in it. So
because there's not as much torque on it?
Not as much torque, correct.
Oh my gosh, I got it right. I'm very proud of myself. I'm not gonna lie. K Messi goes, are 5 blades great in tight areas because stumps can't get between the blade and can't get between the blades as easily? Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Should you be throwing this thing on the Red River?
You could get on plane in shallower water with them, but you got to raise your jack plate to do that.
And then is it way more important on a prop like this to keep it pristine? Obviously, you want to keep all your props pristine, but on this, where is there any, can you have little? You obviously don't want to get into anything.
I would say, Matt, it would be no different than any other prop.
Okay.
If you've got damage to the leading edge, you want to get that addressed and get it cleaned up because that can lead to a crack. But as far as longevity, durability of the prop, it's going to be like any other prop that you would run.
How long did you guys work on this one?
A year and a half, 2 years.
And how many prototypes did you go through, and how many testing phases?
God, we went through probably 10 or 15 different prototypes, and we narrowed that down to 2 or 3. And then when we got the one, we were really, really super happy with. And this is what we were talking about before. We finally got him in the production run. And Frank says, okay, let's go down to the lake. And we did. And we're sitting in the boat, and he looked at me, Matt, and he's like, Todd, he goes, freaking talk, smile, do something, man. He goes, you're all nervous. I go, look, this is a big deal, because if this doesn't run like the prototype does, we're in a world of hurt. You know what I mean? And he just looked at me, and usually he's the one that's nervous, and I'm the one that's laughing and trying to cut up a little bit. But the minute we hit the gas and we got up on plane, it was all smiles all the way around.
Yeah, the thing performed actually. It probably performed a smidge better than the original prototype, to be honest with you. But that being said, this prop's finished. The original prototype wasn't quite as.
It was just hand built.
Yeah, it was hand built, so it wasn't quite as perfect. But
what's the name of it?
Perfect.
This is the RWS Rough Water Series 5. RWS 5.
All right, and you can. We didn't get to this part. Can you buy them, or is it like Frank and you with them now, and then you're just like, oh, watch us go?
No, they are.
I didn't know. I should have checked. I mean, we're on a show. Available. I should have checked.
Yeah, no, they are available right now, actually.
All right, go ahead. How do we get our hands? Like, can you talk about like what the cost is for these things and where you can get them?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll start out by saying this: they are all square bore. So the guys that are asking, will it fit my motor? Any hub kit you drop in, just like any other wheel that's on the market today, and it's going to be, bolt up, ready to go on any shaft. Okay. The prop retail price is $949.
Okay.
If you're out of state, there's no sales tax, and just the freight out to you. And there is a 1-year warranty on the propeller. And they come precision balanced, polished, and heat treated, and ready to go. It is a super, super nice piece.
I just learned that it doesn't mean anything that it's polished. That's just for show.
It looks very good when you're going down the road. I thought there was
something handy. To get one of these, to have more questions, to see if guys wanted them, go to the is it just hydromotive.com or
it is, okay. But the best way is probably just to reach me direct at 330-425-4266.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to create a banner.
Holy crap, we're going to have a banner, instant made banner.
Look at this.
Count it down backwards from 5.
And math and physics in the same show.
I know, it's amazing.
My dad is an industrial engineer, and now I'm struggling with spelling engineering. ENGINEERING.
You're on it.
Okay.
Works for me.
What's the number again?
330-425-4266.
You're going to get a bunch of, is your refrigerator running? Why don't you go catch it?
If not, maybe it needs a different prop.
Oh, no, I don't want to do that. I would like to
scroll. You want a scrolling banner?
Yes, I got it. I'm going to save that. I'm going to show. Look at that.
Look at that.
Nice work.
330-425-4266.
Perfect.
If you also have a question or you can't call, do you have an email, or do you want them to just email me and then I can forward it to you?
You can do that. Usually we try to talk to the customer, Matt, because going through emails, trying to break down conversations on boat setup gets a little long in the tooth.
So call Todd, 330-425-4266. And for less than $1,000, you can be set. So this is something that I would imagine that I need. Because, I mean, if I plan on fishing the opens, we always go up to the Great Lakes, Thousand Islands, Lake Ontario, Champlain, that type of thing. And you put it in a prop box or whatever. And when you head up there, if it's calm, you don't need it. If it's going to be rough, you spend 5 minutes, you pop your prop off, you pop this one on, and you're good to go for the day.
Correct. And the thing is that
that sounds like a dangerous dog, Todd.
That dog is a pussycat.
That dog sounds like he would rip out your jugular. What kind is it? Can we show him? Because typically, if dogs bark on BTL, we have to show it. That's been the rule
dogs
for the last
and cats
5
alike.
years.
I can get him in here in a second. He's, I think, trying to eat the Amazon driver right now.
Well, that's good. That's okay. That works out. Hell, I was going to say something, and now I forgot where I was going.
Well, that's it. If you have it, I mean, and you got a bunch of these things or a few of these things, I'd imagine it's hard to mass produce these things.
We've got 25 out of the first run, and we're expecting 25 more. So we're going to be stocked up good.
One of a kind.
Absolutely. Purpose built.
Yeah. This thing, this should be your spare prop, basically.
Yep.
because then you have your big water prop in your boat with you. You have your speed prop that you run normally. And then this works as a spare. So if you throw a blade on your go fast prop, you can put this one on and you're not stuck anywhere. And then if the weather gets crappy, you can throw this one on.
I mean, I'm not wrong. Like, I mean, if you just buy a stock like Fury prop and stuff, you're looking at $750, $800.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's right there with them, and you're getting a custom prop.
That is correct.
Anything else you want to get in here, Todd? We got to see the dog, man.
You want to see the dog?
Yeah.
Get the dog.
All right. Can I move for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're not allowed. You got to do it from there. Stretch Armstrong.
How many props have you worked on with Todd over the years?
I can't even guess.
There he is.
I got 4 in my garage right now.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Oh yeah, it's not. Yeah, that's not a jugular eating dog. That's a big baby.
What did I do?
No, you're good.
I just lost mine.
We got you. Can you hear us still?
I can still hear you.
Yeah, we can still see you. You're still good. That looks like a very friendly puppy.
It is. It's so cute, man.
I don't know where mine went.
No,
there we go.
He's out.
Are you back on screen?
Yeah, he added himself.
Come here. Sit down.
Oh,
You gotta sit down.
He's off screen.
There we go.
There he is.
All right. Gosh, everyone has cool dogs. I want to get a dog so bad. I haven't had one in a minute. All right. Anything else, Todd?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good. It was a lot of fun testing these things out. And
what's the name of it again? One more time.
The RWS5.
Which stands for Rough Water Special.
Rough Water Series.
Rough Water Series. And then 5 for the 5-blade.
You got it.
I like it. It's good chatting with you.
Matt, thanks for having us on. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. See you. Go play some fetch.
We'll talk to you guys. Thanks.
Adios, man.
All right.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
That's a whole nother world, man.
It is.
And all that stuff.
It is. But you know what's funny? I never go on Lake Erie without it. Ever.
Yeah.
It's just I've been caught too many times without it and fighting my way back and going, man, this would have been 100 times easier if I had put my 5-blade on.
So how does that work then? He has relationships with like milling companies to where they can put it in like a 3D or a CAD drawing or something and say this is what they want, and then they take a block and literally like put it in the machine. And
yeah, so actually what happens is they make one blade
on
a quarter tube for the angle, the rake, everything else. And then they make the one, and it's like a, I'm going to call it wax, but it's not really wax, but it's like a wax mold of the one blade. Then it goes to the foundry, they blueprint it and add them on the tube.
Is it kind of like, I'm trying to think of something that I can relate this to. Is it kind of like crankbait that may look the exact same to 99.999% of people, but you put it in the water, you make 5 cranks with it, and you go, yup or no?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's just you've thrown so many and you've looked at so many and you know the type of wiggle and the depth and how it's tracking to where you can be like, no, it needs to be thinner, it needs to be thicker, it needs to be different, like all sorts of different stuff. And he's just dealt with so many props that he knows, and you guys. Yeah,
well, know. I wish he was on for this section, because the reality of it is that he created a couple of different blade shapes, couple of different rake angles, and different tubes, and then we ran them all, and we would be like, one we put on and we took it, we put it on, went to run, turned around, brought right back to the trailer and took it off and put a big X on it. That ain't never going to work. And then, so what happened was as we get closer, then he starts tweaking stuff out. Okay, well, it did this, we need it to do this. And then he'll, change something on it, and then we do it again. And it's a long process because, you can't make one of these in an hour. So it's a very, very long process. But once it's done and it's right, it's always going to be right because they're cast the same, every one of them. Where some of your store-bought props, performance fluctuates on the same pitch, same size prop. You'll have some fluctuations because not all the props are perfect. Like the pitch isn't always the same on every blade, et cetera, et cetera. And when these came in, he mic'd them all out. Everything's identical on every prop. So
we got to watch the Hydromotive Engineering hype video. Have you ever seen this on the website? Jeffries. It looks like Jeffries made this. Like, this is Jeffries' video.
I have never seen it, to be brutally honest.
It's pretty good. It's got a little. It's got like it's got a Miami Vice vibe.
Of course
to
it does.
So
I was at Todd's the other day. I was watching all their race videos.
Yeah, this is it. You ready for this?
Oh yeah, let's fire it up there.
All right, here we go. There you go.
Great. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, so I was watching their race videos where they race those little 12 and 14 footers.
Yeah.
That go like 80 miles an hour. It's ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous.
Are you ready for the greatest transition in the history of day 4?
Yeah. So
you cannot catch smallmouth if you can't get to them, and you can't weigh them in if you can't get back. So now that we can get there and get back with the RWS 5, the floor is yours.
Okay,
for an overview of Great Lakes smallmouth in 30 minutes or less.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go through this. This is the cliff notes. This is very important because it's gonna bring everything together in one segment. So we're gonna go pre-spawn. So on the Great Lakes, okay, pre-spawn water temperature is everything. So the pre-spawn generally starts when the water temperature is in the upper 40s to low 50s. Now, the depth range of where you're going to find these bass will differ based on what basin of the lake you're in. For Lake Erie, there's a western basin, a central basin, and an eastern basin. Some of the other Great Lakes will have areas of the lake that's flatter, deeper, etc. So it'll be similar in some of the other Great Lakes. So in Lake Erie, specifically in the western basin, typically the pre-spawn starts at depths between 17 to 25 feet. That's where the fish are staging. In the central basin, they'll stage like right around 25 to 30 feet. And in the eastern basin, since it's the deepest basin, it'll be 28 to 35 feet. These are staging areas. Now, here's the important thing about the pre-spawn. Pre-spawn, this time of year, the bass are going to relate to near shore structure that's connected to the shoreline. So big flats that come out. They're going to look for the sharpest breaks on these to hang out at. So I'll just, where'd I go? Okay. So this is connected to the main shoreline and it goes out, and this distance from here to the shoreline could be 400 yards, could be 50 yards, it could be a half a mile. It just depends how long the flat is that goes out. And so this time of year, the bass are going to stage on the steeper breaks and the irregularities on the ends of them. What you're going to want to look for is isolated rock and gravel mixed with sand. That's what you're going to look for in the pre-spawn. So now we're going to go to the spawn. So as the water warms, the bass move to the shallower structure. They become way more active. They're not spawning yet, but they're where they're going to spawn. They become very active. This is where when you see everybody's just smashing smallmouths, they're just like on fire. That's what happens. And some of the smallmouth actually will make Spawning runs up rivers, into estuaries, shallow bays, etc. When the water temperature starts to stabilize, that's usually around 55 degrees and slightly above, the bass will move to the tops of everything. So if they're on bumps and high spots, they literally will move to the tops. Now this is a little exaggerated because, you know, I put a bass on every hump, you know, on every high spot. But
that's the mega school there.
Right, that's what you really want to find. So and what they're doing is they're getting in preparation to start spawning. This is where they will spawn. Now, here's the crazy thing, okay? Spawning depths have a big range on the Great Lakes. It could be anything less than 10 feet or 20 feet or deeper, depending on the water clarity. So that's what you have to remember about spawning smallmouth on the Great Lakes. And I consider Thousand Islands and stuff like that into the mix. And so now I'm going to mix post-spawn and summer together. So here's what happens. After the spawn, most of the smallies that migrated up into the shallow bays, rivers, etc., they're gone. They vacate and they start going deeper. Just like the bass do that spawned on the main lake bass also start going deeper. So now after the spawn, the post-spawn period, you've got all these bass moving out. Now, they won't do it like all on the same day, but a matter of, you know, several weeks, there will be no bass shallow anymore. Well, there always are bass shallow, but the main population won't be shallow anymore. And they'll follow their pre-spawn locations out to the deeper stuff. So now what happens, you got summertime coming in. So by midsummer, most of the smallmouth move away from any shoreline related structure. So like the pre-spawn stuff that we showed you, those are pretty much going to be void of really big fish, at least any populations of them. They begin to relate to deep offshore stuff not connected to any shoreline cover. So you're going to look for stuff like where the basin goes from rock to clay or clay to rock, sand to rock, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to look for isolated rock piles, glacier deposits, everything we talked about prior, but now it's not going to be on the flat that's connected to the mainland. It's going to be way off of that. That's their summer location. Now, the depths can range, and this is crazy. You can get them on some sections of the lake 25 to 50 feet deep, and some sections of the lake even 60 feet deep. Bait fish are the absolute 100% key component here. If there's no bait, there's no bass. That's just the way it goes in the
Does that include gobies?
Yeah, gobies also.
Okay.
But most of it's going to be bait fish. And they're deep, they're very deep, and that's what they're keying on. That's post-spawn through summer. So now what we're going to talk about is late summer, through fall. So as summer progresses and starts to end, then what happens is your water temperatures start to cool. As your water temperatures start to cool, the smallmouth will again start to gravitate towards shore, and they'll start to use the exact same stuff they used in the pre-spawn stage. But in the early part of the fall, they have a tendency to suspend. They have a tendency to suspend on top of the stuff, off the bottom. Okay, this is when crankbait fishing becomes off the hook on these fall smallmouth. This is one of my favorite times to actually fish for them.
Because the bait's a little bit higher, so they're targeting.
Suspending, they're targeting it, they're feeding up. They've been feeding up most of the summer.
Okay.
It's great. As fall progresses, the bass start to lock back down on the cover, basically for ambush, because there's a huge migration of bait fish in the fall on the Great Lakes. The bait fish will start migrating to estuaries, rivers, marinas, anything like that. And most of the bait fish that you're going to encounter on Great Lakes are going to be emerald shiners, ciscos, alewives, and even shad. We have gizzard shad here too. And all these will migrate back to the shallows late in the fall. And that's really, this is the fastest, condensed version of the seasons of Great Lakes smallmouths that I could possibly have done.
It's fantastic. I have a couple, I guess, questions, points, or whatever. So
yeah, rifle it out.
I just got done with the open on the St. Lawrence, and it's amazing that you talked about the bait fish, because I was fishing humps in 35 to 45 feet of water, and it was the first time that I'd been on that fishery where I felt like the smallmouth, they always target gobies, but they were also targeting bait fish. And the reason that I found this was, I mean, you had 20-foot visibility. It's easy to just reel the things in and fight them. But in practice, as I hooked it, I was watching to see how big one was, and 20 feet down, he started spitting up bait fish. And I was like, oh, that's really key. So the next one that spit one up, I went over there and I scooped it out of the water, and I said, holy cow, this thing's eating a bait fish, not a goby. So I changed my bait profile in that practice from a green pumpkin bait to a smelt or white colored bait, and catch ratio went through the roof because that's what they were targeting. So like important to not only see it on the graph, but use your eyes to visually, because 90% of the time, if they're gorging down there,
they barf them up coming up.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I noticed was a lot of the areas where the smallmouth were targeting bait fish was also walleye laden, and where the smallmouth were just relating to the bottom on rock and goby and crayfish was not catching walleye. So then you could drive around and be like, okay, there's bait fish on this hump, there's bait fish on this hump, there's bait fish on this hump, because there were walleye charters on all those humps.
Right. I mean, walleye are eating machines. They're absolute eating machines, and a walleye is never going to be where there's no food. Just like in the fall on the inland lakes, when you experience the striper, when the stripers come, start busting up, stripers are never where there's no bait. White bass are the same way. If you drop down and you catch a white bass on the Great Lakes, you're around bait.
And now,
go ahead.
I was talking with Michael Simonton when I was out on Erie, and he said that the walleyes just roam over nothing on mud bottoms and things like that. But this is more so if you are around a structural element that would hold fish. I mean, I'm not suggesting, and I don't think you're suggesting, that you go find walleye boats drifting mud flats in 25 feet of water and expect to slam smallmouth on bait fish. It's more when there's a, like, hey, this is the reef, this is the high spot, this is the rock pile.
Exactly. The smallmouth are going to want some form of structure. Now, there is a faction of smallmouth that have become pelagic, and they will roam underneath the bait fish all summer long, and they won't really settle into anything. Hardest smallmouth to catch, hardest smallmouth to stay on, and in a lot of instances, some of the biggest smallmouth in the lake.
Dude, you literally just described what happened to Matt Becker on the final day of the BPT on Saginaw Bay. He had been on some fish. They were gone on the final day. He's out there. He's committed to the smallmouth. He said he's not on anything. He looks at his forward-facing sonar, went, holy crap, that's a group of giant smallmouth on bait. He catches 22.5 pounds. He has the heaviest bag. He said they just materialized. He said, and then they were gone, and he did all of his damage in like an hour and a half. And they were roaming smallmouth in the summertime, not really relating to anything, chasing bait. He took advantage of it. Everyone else sucked that day, and he destroyed the field and won $250,000. That's just what you described, Frank. Exactly what you described how that just went down on Saginaw Bay on a Great Lake.
Yeah, that happens. They're the hardest to stay on. I forget. One of the Japanese anglers won a buffalo event.
Coda, when he was almost
Coda. Yeah. So I called him right after the event because he was on pelagics, and I had to find out how he stayed on them for the entire for the entire tournament. So I'm like, dude, how did you stay on those fish? And he said, well, the first day he went out and got on them, he said they weren't exactly where he found them in practice, but they weren't far away. The second day when he went out there, they weren't there. They weren't in the same area. So he started making big circles around where he found them. And then he got on the fringes of them and then keyed back in on them. And they were way far away from where he found them. Well, the third day they moved again, and he did the same thing again, and then he finally got on them. And I had to call him and congratulate him, because I'll be honest with you, I have never been able to get on pelagics and stay on them more than the day when I found them. And so I had to call him up and congratulate him. And I also, exactly.
So the middle of it's where he found them. So he started each day right there. And if they weren't there, that's how he would graph.
That's
and
correct.
Then boom, he'd find it out there. Sometimes it took him 10 minutes. Sometimes it took him an hour or two.
It took him over an hour on the final day to relocate him.
That's brilliant, though.
He said, yeah.
Well, you don't have that much fishing time out there either. You only had like 4 hours of fishing time.
Right. So, but it was very fascinating to me, because I have never been able to stay on them more than a day. Now, when I find them out there, I crush their brains out.
Because they're typically feeding.
They're always feeding. But then they're gone. And the wind changes everything, because wind changes current. Wind makes current stronger. Wind takes current away, and wind will change current, change its direction. If you have a lot of wind blowing, let's say you're fishing the South Shore and you've got a lot of south wind going in, the water blows away from the South Shore. Okay. When the wind stops, the next day you've got all that water coming back in, and the current is insane. And so the bass put the feed bag on when that happens. So it's very important. Current is one of the most predictable ways to catch bass, is in the current. And so you have to be cognizant and pay attention of that current.
Jim, with a great point. How the hell do you find them if they're on nothing? Or will they be relating to something? Do you start on something that you feel like is a high percentage, and then you kind of expand off of what the high so you started just if there's nothing on that, or you're only catching a few, then you kind of start idling around and looking for clues as whether you see bait on the screen or fish here, fish there.
So here's something interesting. So the other day I was out smallmouth fishing, and of course I was fishing bank related structure. Even though it was way offshore, it was bank related. Wasn't catching anything, wasn't hardly seeing anything, to be honest with you. Had a real short day. Caught 1 4-pounder and half a dozen little ones, and very sporadic, very far and few between. Started working my way deeper. Got this zone where there was just nothing there. No bait fish, no walleyes, no sheephead. I was seeing zero. I kept going out. I had a rock pile in 42 feet of water. Came up to about 35. Went out there. The thing was polluted with fish. There was bait fish everywhere. There was probably a 1/4 mile square of nothing but solid sheephead and white bass.
Oh, lovely.
On the bottom. Now, the reality of it is that at this point in time during the day was pretty much over and I had to go. But it was unbelievable. I went from seeing 1 or 2 fish here and there to zero, nothing, to the whole ecosystem was starting out in 40 feet of water. I saw schools of walleye when I was idling around out there. I saw schools of walleye. So all I would have had to do was go back out the next day, go back to that depth range and start idling around until I found stuff. And I probably would have started catching bigger smallmouth and way more of them, because it was night and day. There was a section of that water that was absolutely void of everything, and then all of a sudden it came alive. Wow. And so that's kind of what you're looking for when you start to chase pelagics.
Steve would like to know, what is your favorite search bait for midsummer offshore smallies? I know what you're going to say, but go ahead and say
it. Well, if you're looking at midsummer, you're deep. So crankbaits don't play. So you got to go tubing, you got to go drop shot, and then you got to get a spoon out.
It's a tube. It's a tube.
It's a tube. I mean, right. I mean, here's the deal. A tube, a drop shot, and a spoon in the summer is money.
Little slab spoon.
3/4 ounce. Yeah, 3/4 ounce. Right. A jigging spoon, not a horizontal spoon, a jigging spoon. Yeah. They're money in the fall. They're feeding on bait fish. You drop the spoon right into the pot of bait fish and you start stroking it like a madman. It looks crippled, injured, and they can't resist it. So that's a pretty good search tool. You can cover water that way, but there are a lot of times where they don't want the spoon. So then I'll drop shot over the top of their heads or snap a tube. This is a time of year where I'm not dragging a tube. I'm snapping it vertically.
Okay.
I want it to fly high up in the water column and boom back down and pop back up and boom back down. Because the other thing is gobies don't have swim bladders. So gobies cannot suspend. Yeah. If you've ever seen a goby when they're scared and they take off, they'll shoot up, whoa, and then they stop and they just go whoa, right back to the bottom because they don't have a swim bladder. So,
do you think those would be good, like garlic, lemon, garlic pepper, like a plate of gobies? Someone has to have tried that. I know a guy. I mean,
I would do it. I would
try it. Steve was saying more specifically St. Clair, but it still applies to St. Clair. You're still snapping a tube on St. Clair.
Yeah,
a little bit. You're throwing a little more crankbait into there though, because now you're not dealing with deep water.
Right. If you would have said St. Clair, I would have said cranking.
Okay. I did make a note on one other thing that you said, and that you were talking about the fish lifting off the bottom. I have run into this when I've been up north too, just because you don't see them. I believe the Open was won that way by Jody White. He was pulling fish off the bottom that were locked onto the bottom that were damn near impossible to see with your 2D or your forward-facing sonar. And that didn't mean that there wasn't a 27-pound school of smallmouth down there. So on that time of the year when they're not suspended on the bait, they are on the bottom. Yeah. You got to fish to find them and then pay attention to your electronics, whether it's under the boat, whether it's forward-facing sonar, to see those fish lift off the bottom. And you're basically manufacturing the suspended fish so you can actually see them.
Yeah, like on my 2D sonar, when I'm on top of them on 2D and they're literally smashed on the bottom, they're locked down. You drop down, you'll see one come up and go back down.
Yep.
You'll see it. On forward facing, same thing. If you're forward facing and you cast out there and you start banging bottom or you run something just over the top, you'll see one come up and go back down. And the other thing I look for on 2D sonar, especially when I'm right on top of them, is I'm always watching, because you'll see stuff on the bottom doing this. You'll see you're getting your little orange spot, and it'll bubble up and then go back down to bottom, bubble up. So it'll look like a little boulder, but then it disappears. And so I pay attention to that. That I learned from ice fishing more than anything, because the walleye would swim in, and if they were snug hugged on the bottom, all of a sudden your bottom line would look like the bottom, but it would be different. And then you drop down on them, and then all of a sudden you see them come up against to get your jig and spoon in the, ice fishing. And so that's that. I learned that, and then I'm like, oh, I better pay attention to that when I see that smallmouth fishing.
What else you got?
Dude, it was a fun, packed, filled show of info.
It absolutely was. I got to jump on a plane as soon as we're done here. I mean, it's a fun trip. Headed out to LA. I don't know how much fun that'll be, flying into LAX.
That won't be fun. I can promise you.
I've never flown into LAX before. Have you?
No, I no. It's Mammoth. It's a Mammoth airport.
It is. Big shout out to Todd. Like I said, if you guys are interested in procuring one of the 5-blade RWS 5s, you can check it out there. Call Todd.
Call Todd. This prop's a game changer in rough water, guys. I'm not lying.
Yeah, I need that. I need one of those. Because I can have it for 10 or 15 years. I mean, it's still
yeah.
be viable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Matt, when you see the difference, you're going to lose your mind.
Oh, I've been scared trying to climb waves out on Ontario going, this is not working. And it's blowing out.
Yeah, you won't have none of that with this. It's forward progress all the way.
We got some exciting things coming down the pipeline. I don't know how much to say it. I'm going to say it. We're going to do some SCALISH signature series pieces in a variety of mediums.
Yes, we
are.
Is
that a fair assessment? And then also the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame banquet is coming up. I think Iaconelli's getting inducted into that this year.
Oh,
and they have an auction, the silent auction, or it's not, I don't know if it's even silent, but an online auction and an in-person auction that goes along with that. And Frank has agreed to donate a one-off, a signature series piece that is autographed, signed, framed, the whole 9 yards to that auction. So once we get that and the details dialed in on that, we'll tell you where you can bid, when the bidding can start, how you have it. And it's just going to be an 8x10. It's going to have your signature. It's going to be a piece that's been on the show, but one of my favorite drawings. So thank you for doing that, Frank, and for supporting the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame.
Hey, we got to support our own, man. That's just how it goes.
All right, we will be back live next Thursday, 8:30 a.m. Central Time, with another edition of Day 4 with the man Frank SCALISH. Frank, Todd, he's probably petting a dog or testing a prop. Thanks to Todd for jumping on. That's all we got. We'll talk to everybody next week. See ya.
Safe travels.